Schneider from the European Agency for Safety and Health at Work in Bilbao. Elke is a senior project manager in the Prevention and Research Unit, and she's with the agency since 2002. She has been working on a variety of topics, so she was involved in setting up the agency's risk observatory, and she was in charge of the occupational safety and health in figures project. She's a chemist, technical chemist. She studied technical chemistry and biochemistry, and in her presentation, Elke will focus on the report on monitoring systems for exposure and diseases, and of course she will present also the gender perspective. So please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to start by thanking the organizers of this conference, the ETUI, colleagues like Laurent and Tony, whom I've communicated a lot with, for organizing the conference and also for inviting us to present here at this conference. What I would like to do is run you through a few projects, information from a few projects, a few publications of the agency, to give some insight in what we have done. I'll say a few words also about our current campaign, the Healthy Workplaces campaign, that is the largest occupational safety and health campaign, and that is concentrating on dangerous substances and more specifically also on carcinogens, and give you an insight on what the actions are under the campaign, what our colleagues in the member states are doing to support the campaign. I'll start by, as others have done, showing you a few figures on the issue. Cancer, as has been said before, is the second main cause of death in the EU, and occupational cancers are actually the main cause of fatalities at work. We have this figure that we've seen very often on the proportion of occupational cancer deaths among the older deaths, which is a figure of 4 to 8%. When we look at that figure, it's important to keep in mind that this is not the same for all cancers. So some of the cancers, like the ones from asbestos, which have been mentioned in the first testimony, are actually very much related to work. So a high proportion of these cancers are related to work. Another example is lung cancer, where also quite a high proportion is related to work. So it's always, these figures need to be taken with care. We have some estimations on the cost of these cancers, which are huge. Of course, these are all estimates. We have estimations of the number of deaths due to these cancers, which is also quite a big figure. What we also need to keep in mind is that we may be speaking of different cancers for male workers and female workers, so we really need to look at the different exposures, but also at the different health outcomes. And you mentioned the knockout study, which is looking at occupations and the cancers occurring in these occupations, so that's a very good data source to identify those differences. And what we also need to consider is that on some cancers, which for example for women are the most frequent cancers, like breast cancer, hormone-related cancers, there's still some taboo to speak about these cancers and to address issues like, for example, rehabilitation. So I'll start with the first report that we did at the agency in 2003, so that's 15 years ago, which made a plea for including gender sensitivity into data collections, which already identified that there were assumptions that occupational cancer is more prevalent in men. So sometimes female workers are excluded from studies. It made a plea for including information on the profession in some of the data sources, like death registries or cancer registries, because what was identified is that actually the work that women did was often not considered in these registries, that there was a lack of adequate data sources, and that it was quite difficult to trace exposures to female workers over time. Another issue that was mentioned, and at that time the industry that was in the focus was the semiconductor industry, was to look at the impact of new technologies. So I just mentioned nanotechnologies, for example. It would be important in the new workplaces, new exposures, also to include a gender-sensitive approach to really identify those exposures that might become relevant in the future as regards the health impact. It came to general conclusions to ensure gender balance in research programs and fill the gaps in research, also to assess the gender impact of policies, so the CMD is a good candidate for that, and also to, at the workplace level, to look at gender issues, and for the workplace risk assessment, avoid assumptions and look at the real exposures and at the jobs that are done, and even within one job title, to look at the tasks that are performed by women. We'll have a presentation on cleaners, and that's, for example, an occupation where the tasks performed by the male workers and the female workers are very different, so the exposures will be very different. And of course, the recommendation to share good practices, to share examples of good practice. The next research report that we published was in 2013, so that's 10 years later, where we looked again at the data sources for the risks, exposures, and health problems of female workers. We also looked at specific occupations where women may be exposed, and again found some issues to highlight. One of them is combined exposures. If we look at the data from the European Survey on Working Conditions, one that emerges is that female workers are highly exposed to biological agents and more than male workers because of the professions. Healthcare profession is just one of them, and to a combination of biological and chemical agents. That's also something to take into account in research, but also in workplace prevention. There were unpredictable exposures in some professions like cleaners. So if you move as a cleaner, for example, from one workplace to the other, you're bound to use different products, and the overall assessment of the exposure might be difficult. The same is for home care, for example. If you move from one patient at home to the other, the different medication that people will be taking and potentially workers may be exposed is different. One of the issues that was mentioned already was the aging of the population, but aging is also something that needs to be looked at in the professions because, for example, the healthcare profession is one where the working population is aging, and we looked at the profiles of different age profiles of the female working population, and we could see that older women are actually more likely to work in the healthcare sector and younger women in other jobs than the healthcare sector. So that's also something to take into account. An important issue that we identified is the access to rehabilitation and to disability compensation for female workers. And there the recommendation was really to ensure access for women of all ages and to ensure access to these services also for female workers working in service professions. A very simple thing is, for example, the compatibility with family. So if you have, for example, younger women with children affected by breast cancer, that's something to take into account if you want to design a successful rehabilitation program. Of course, the work of female workers is marked by a higher proportion working in the service sectors. We have increasingly people working at clients' premises, which is a challenge for the implementation of health and safety legislation, if you are working in a patient's home, for example. And we've also identified that there was a lack of information very often for workers, especially in these subcontracted conditions, and there may be a lack of training. Other issues like working part-time may also limit the access to training, for example, and to being involved in discussions about which measures to take at work and so on. So this is one of the tables that we had included in this report to highlight the importance of women's exposure to dangerous substances, which in many instances remains unexplored. Solvents are a very typical chemical substance very often used, and we try to raise awareness of all the jobs and all the occupations where female workers may be exposed and where something needs to be done to prevent these exposures and especially the health effects. And I've already mentioned the issue of biological and infectious agents, which often come in combination with chemical agents. The healthcare sector was already mentioned, but there are others. This is a report that was published in 2014, where we looked at the methodologies that are available for as monitoring exposures, but also health effects, with a focus on cancer and carcinogens. And again, looking at the conclusions that are important for the gender dimensions, we could see that services are less well covered by data, but also by recognition of diseases, that there are some vulnerable groups of workers exposed, and I'll also like to mention young workers here, but the exposures are unassessed. We looked in this report also at other risk factors for cancer, work organizational factors, shift work was already mentioned, but there's also the dimension of increasingly static work, which may potentially, possibly lead to cancer. There's some indications. And around static work, there's always a discussion about lifestyle factors so is it enough to do sports to prevent effects from static work and potential health effects? I would think that there needs to be like an active approach at the workplaces also to deal with static work. And again, we picked up on the return to work for sufferers of cancer, because cancer is increasingly becoming a chronic disease. It's better treated. So a lot of people do come back to work after or during a cancer treatment. So this is an issue that we found was important to address. I'd like to mention now an initiative of which we are a member, where we cooperate with the ETUI, the European Social Partners, the Commission, and some of the member states who are founding members of this initiative. We had a meeting this morning where we discussed some practical actions to be implemented to prevent exposure from carcinogens. And next year, in the framework of our Healthy Workplaces campaign, we will publish a joint information sheet to raise awareness of the risks linked to exposure to carcinogens and also issues relevant to vulnerable workers and gender issues. So that the topic of carcinogens, cancer at work, is a priority in this Healthy Workplaces campaign that runs from 2018 to 19, but the Roadmap initiative is a longer initiative which started in 2016 and potentially will continue after this Healthy Workplaces campaign. In the framework of the campaign, our national contact points, which we call focal points, are also carrying out some activities with some support from us, and there's a very diverse range of activities. I just gave an update at the conference of the Austrian presidency, which was dedicated to carcinogens, on all the actions that are being carried out. So there's labor inspection campaigns, some of them related to specific carcinogens, which were in the proposals for the amendments to the Carcinogens Directive. We have an inclusion of occupational cancer into national or regional strategies. We have summary links to REACH and CLP. There's a range of sectors where activities are being carried out, and that does not only cover the industrial sectors, but also other sectors like cleaning or healthcare, for example. And there are some industrial sectors where potentially female workers may be exposed to. One of the countries with a strong leather industry has, for example, implemented an action in leather manufacturing, a lot of female workers there, or ceramics industry is another example. So quite a few actions there related to carcinogens, and this will continue next year with the campaign. I mentioned that there are national campaigns, so we share about some of the information that is being produced in the member states. Also, in the framework of the campaign, we have a database of resources. There's lots of things being done: guidance for risk assessment, substance information, sectoral guidance, or other. One of the examples I mention here is formaldehyde. That was one of the substances that was discussed in the CMD proposals, and the Austrian Labor Inspection, together with the social insurances, has produced a brochure targeting the healthcare sector, especially the pathological departments, with very practical tools. My message is it can be done, and there is some guidance and some information available out there to do it. They had some nice checklists and a really comprehensive brochure that gives advice, simple advice for the different steps and the different tasks where exposure to formaldehyde might occur. Formaldehyde is one of the carcinogenic substances that is relevant for both genders, and this is just one slide that was presented in a workshop that we recently organized at the Austrian Presidency Conference with data from the Canadian CAREX study, and that shows that although the exposures are not most of them are not high, there is a notable proportion of female workers that may be exposed to these substances, and there are other substances where this needs to be taken into account. Different jobs, so different prevention measures and different practical steps to be taken there. I'd like to mention another type of publication that we've prepared for the campaign. And this is a case study from, again, from the healthcare sector, where a hospital addressed the issue of ethylene oxide, the use of ethylene oxide to sterilize surgical equipment that can't be sterilized with heat or with the use of humidity. And they took all the measures that were necessary and that are outlined in the Carcinogens Directive, a closed system, so measures for potential exposures when there's maintenance, when the equipment is opened, for potential accidents, and also the location of this device was really thought through so that fire and explosion risks, if anything occurred, would not affect too many people. What could be shown in this case, and that unfortunately is very rare, is that actually, although in the first step this was an expensive measure to take, there were savings, and it was more economic, but also more ergonomic and easier to use for the workers who had to use the devices. I'd like to mention one of the projects that we've run in the last years, and my colleague Marine Cavé, who's run this, is in the room for any questions, and that is a project on rehabilitation and return to work after cancer. We've just published a summary in several languages of the report for that, and we are going to publish a short document for advice for employers in all the languages. That's an important issue where we could identify some important recommendations. That it's important to do, one message would be no unsolicited workplace adaptations. So it has to be something that is discussed with the worker, but also with other partners like the treating medical services, the occupational health services, and the human resources department. We also saw that return to work is more problematic for the self-employed and those working in small enterprises, which means that we need some support for small enterprises, and that's precisely why we produced this short document for employers. What we found is that rehabilitation needs to be put in place very early, so this process needs to be started already when treatment starts. And what we also found, because we looked at this specifically, is that there were no programs aimed at return to work after occupational or work-related cancer. This project includes some interviews and case studies in companies, and it has to be said that it was not easy to identify companies who would like to cooperate, who wanted to cooperate with us on this, indicating that it's still a difficult topic to address for the enterprises. So there needs to be some demystification there. Also the context, the legal context in the countries is of course important, because this has a high impact on the economics of the workers and of the enterprises, has to be said. Small enterprises who lose a worker can have really problems. And the context of having, for example, paid sick leave, or the legal possibility for a worker who has had cancer to work part-time is maybe an important feature there. So I'd like to also mention that we have some descriptions of different types of programs for rehabilitation in this report. Very different initiatives, for example, some targeting unemployed workers. So quite a diverse picture there. What could also be seen is that actually the initiatives described in research have very little to do with those that are implemented in practice. So that's a bit of a strange picture that we got there. My last slide that I would like to show is one on also a very recent report that we've published, and that looked at the feasibility of a survey on exposure to cancer risk factors at work. The report has been published, and we have a discussion whether such a survey could be implemented at the European level, could be implemented by our agency to improve a little bit the evidence base and the data on exposure to cancer risk factors. And I would like to conclude here, having given you some insight on what we've done on this topic. Thank you.